Hi, and welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Ryan Mackenzie of the 134th Legislative District in Berks and Lehigh counties. I currently serve as the Vice Chairman of the House Labor and Industry Committee, and recently I sat down with our Chairman, Mario Scavello, and fellow committee member Seth Grove to discuss current labor issues such as prevailing wage and unemployment compensation reform. We also touch on the important issue of property tax reform, and on today's program, I'd like to share our discussion with you.
Pleasure it is to be with you gentlemen here today. Seth, I want to commend you on the work you've done with property tax reform and the various bills and ideas that you put out there, because it's something that needs to be continued. We can't let this issue die. There's a lot of folks out there really in trouble. Every year they get that school property tax bill, and that bill just keeps growing. And so I commend you, because that to me is probably one of the number of issues here facing us in the Commonwealth, in the growing areas of the Commonwealth. And I believe you're going to start to see that in your area, because the growth will bring more schools, and as you build buildings, that's a debt that needs to be paid for, and unfortunately the formula doesn't help us in the growing areas, so we've got to get that corrected.
And I appreciate that, being the godfather of getting a plan moving forward. I mean, you were originator on trying to make a difference for homeowners out there, and I just know a lot of people in New York County and myself appreciate the work you've done over the years, keeping it in the forefront, and obviously the only person to get a statewide plan through the General Assembly, out of the House, over to the Senate. It was really a yeoman's job, and we appreciate all your hard work.
That was a long night. We were on the floor till past 11 o'clock at night. In those days, you could stay, you stay into the morning hours, and they tried to beat me down, but we stayed focused, and we were able to do it. Unfortunately, the Senate had other ideas, and the two leaders of the Senate at that time that didn't bring the bill up for a vote did not get reelected. But unfortunately, the next year we lost the House. Yeah. And so when we lost the House, we lost the majority. The minority at the time, the majority, the Democrats, did not bring up a property tax bill, although they said they would. In 4 years that they had the House, not one time did a property tax bill come to the floor for a vote.
And so that's why I think it's encouraging that we do see a lot of talk and discussion on this point right now. Now that we are in a position to make some changes, you're hearing about proposals from Seth, from a lot of other legislators out there, recognizing that property tax is a very significant problem. And in the Lehigh Valley and in Berks County, this is something that people are dealing with every year. They see their property taxes go up. And so, you know, I think it's a complex issue, though. It really is. And we need an answer that's going to be applicable all across the state. And so, you know, really maintaining local control is something that is important to me, and I want to see that in any one of these property tax proposals that comes out there. So, you know, I look forward to having this discussion in the House, and I think we're going to hopefully see some changes.
Yeah, and you know what? That's what we just got to keep focused on it, keep thinking about it, keep talking about it, because if we don't, it just, you know, there's a lot of folks out there that just want to say, it's not an issue, let's go, you know, because it's not an issue in many parts of the state. Many parts of the state over the years have done very well for themselves with that hold harmless, because if your population stayed the same, or if you dropped population, guess what? You're still getting paid off of a 1990 census per student. And that's one of the things that have really hurt York, Monroe County, and I believe you're going to start seeing a little bit in the Lehigh Valley in your area, because as they're building buildings.
Your point about correcting that funding formula is dead on. I mean, it absolutely is. And the other thing that I point to is also spending. You know, the spending needs to be reined in our school districts. We can do a lot at the state level, but also at that local level. They really need to control their spending. And I think in this recession, some of the local school districts in my area have done a good job of it. Others haven't done such a good job. So, you know, residents out there really need to be getting more active in their school boards and talking to their local elected officials about this issue as well.
You know, we did pass something last year that really helps us with what you just described, and that is that anything over the cost of living with those 3 exemptions has to come to the voter for approval. So they just can't raise taxes like they used to. And the three, of course, the three exemptions are, the first is pension obligations, the special education, which is a federal mandate, and the third was what was the third?
Electoral debt.
Any debt, any debt that they had. So those three. So the pension obligation will sunset. The debt, they can't, any debt that they've already incurred.
Yeah.
So the only one that'll be out there is the special needs, special education, because it's a federal mandate. So
and we did a good job of tying in the $1 billion that we give them in special education funding to say, you do get reimbursed from the state for that moving forward. So a good thing to do is probably find out how to reform that special education funding formula. And Bernie O'Neill's bill we passed will do a great job of doing that.
Bernie's a great job, former educator, and so you know it's great to see that we are taking some steps. At least we can stop the bleeding first, and basically that's what this will do. And in my area, for the first time in a long time, 3 of the school districts did not raise taxes last year.
Wow.
The 4th shouldn't have, and I actually pleaded with them. They raised taxes by $500,000, and I didn't think they needed to, but it would have been if all 4, we didn't have something like that in over 20 years in Monroe County.
Wow.
So that bill that we passed is significant.
Yeah, I had a local school district that has about a $3 million structural deficit. Approved to hire a new assistant superintendent at $115,000 when they're looking at getting rid of their award-winning music program. So it's those decisions that keep building and building and building time after time that create this monstrosity of education funding that, you know, I don't think we'll ever be able to put enough money in really anything in government to make it work. It's you get your money, you do the best job you can. Yeah. And I think that should be the expectation.
It's a great point. You know, I know that Governor Rendell, former Governor Rendell, talked about this, and I think in some cases we have 500 school districts. You just mentioned 115,000 for a superintendent. Maybe it's time that we look at merging some of these school districts. It's the taxpayer that's going to be the winner here. How often I see school buses go up a street and pass 4 homes, and will pick up kids at the end of the corner there, because that's in a different municipality and those kids go to a different school. And that's the farthest point for them than if they were to go to school in the bottom 4, because the school is like a quarter of a mile away. We see that often with school buses from 2 different school districts are crossing each other. And maybe some thought should go into some consolidation. In my county, I'd wish for a county-wide school district, 1 central administration. We have 4 school districts and have 2 school board members from each one of the school districts and 1 at large. But 1 superintendent, 1 curriculum. You know, why should the curriculum be different than any of the 4 school districts? 1 guy making the 150 versus 4. You know, but that type of stuff needs to be looked at, because that's how you save. That's a business aspect, maybe because of my background. But you know, that's where we can save. We can save on transportation. We can save on the administrative, and put the money in the classroom. The money should be in the classroom where the kids are, because to me, you know, those are our future, and give them all the tools that they need. We don't need the generals. We need the money in the schools.
And that point about having the money in the classroom is dead on, because everybody, I think, knows that good teachers in the classroom are what makes the biggest difference in a student's education. So we need to do everything we can to get those dollars to the classroom.
You know, this is one conversation that we can have forever, but you know, and I'd love to do another show with you, Seth, on this issue, on you guys, because to me, that we could talk about public education and the funding for that, for education and the spending all day long. But why don't we just change the topic for a moment? Let's talk about what we're doing here at in the Labor and Industry Committee, and some of the bills that we just passed out.
Yeah, we've been doing a great job. Obviously, Chairman of Labor and Industry, Vice Chairman of Labor and Industry.
You got it.
Slowly rank and file member.
No, you're a big part of the committee. You are a big part of the committee. Actually, we passed one of your bills, and House Bill 403. Why don't you tell us about it?
Well, it's a great bill. We had a local news TV station that actually did some investigative reporting and found out we were paying unemployment compensation to individuals in jail. Obviously, to be able to be eligible for unemployment, you need to be able to work. And if you're sitting in jail, you can't get out there and work.
Exactly.
So luckily, that precipitated the Labor and Industry department, which is great. They took the initiative. They started communicating with the county jail system. They were already doing it with the state jail system. Now they're talking, now they know who is in jail, every single person in the Commonwealth, to kind of close that little loophole. But we went a step further and did some additional penalties on individuals who actually try to commit willful fraud and they're in jail. Not to mention the federal law requires us to do some changes to help reduce the amount of fraud in our system. So we did some increasing of penalties as well. So very comprehensive. We'll do some cost savings, and obviously I think it's all of our responsibility to fight fraud wherever it lies in the state government.
That was a great bill. I read that. I read the article, and you approached me with the bill. I said, we got to do it. This is something that needs to be done. And it passed the committee unanimously.
Yep.
Because it doesn't make a difference if you're Republican or Democrat. One thing for sure is if there's fraud, we don't want to see it, because what it does, it hurts it for everyone else. We want those dollars to be there for the people that need it. And if we're going to rake it and people are going to abuse the system, that money won't be there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's common sense.
Yeah.
Common sense approach.
I believe the bill is going to come up for a vote probably when we get back, and and I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. It last session passed unanimously out of committee, out of the House, so very non-controversial, very easy bill to let the taxpayers know we're doing everything we can to look after their money.
We're going to make sure that bill not only does it leave the House, but I'll be in touch with the senator, the Labor Committee, and ask him also to move the bill. And Senator Gordon, I'm sure we have a good working relationship. We've already met 2 or 3 times on various pieces of legislation. So I'm looking forward to.
Absolutely, and in the broader picture, as Mario said, we do need to make sure that we provide benefits for individuals who actually need this. And the system, the unemployment compensation system, we made some pretty significant reforms to that last year.
Great changes,
but it's still in debt. And so this type of fraud can really help us not only crack down on individuals who are doing the wrong thing, but also make sure that we do pay off our debt and make sure that those benefits are there for individuals who need them going forward. So all around, it's a positive bill, and something that government should have done a long time ago. And finally, now we're getting to do it. So look forward to seeing that in the full House. One
of the other bills that we passed, House Bill 393, Representative Jerry Knowles' bill, and to me that was a moment in time where he spoke more on that bill than any other bill coming out of any committee. I kind of tell him, I said, Jerry, sometimes you're, but he was so passionate about it. And the bill provides parties that unemployment compensation, the appeals, they want to see the records and the testimony, a written or recorded testimony, and that wasn't happening in some cases, and so.
Yeah, and this is something that Representative Knowles did. It originated from a constituent of his that had a problem going through the system, and so again, this is really Representative doing his job, representing his constituents, making a positive change, just so that they can see the transcript. And if you're going to appeal your case, you want to have an accurate record of what happened there. So we were all very supportive of that, and anything we can do to fix that process for both the employer and the individual recipient who may be appealing their claims is a positive thing. So
you just brought something up, and I as soon as it just I usually bring students up here, and I tell them, the idea for a bill does not start in Harrisburg. It starts back home, and you hit that right exactly.
Absolutely.
Any legislation that we like, even yours introduced in it was a local media. Any idea for legislation, folks back at home, it doesn't start in Harrisburg. It starts back there. So if there's an issue, visit your offices, visit our offices, and if we agree with you and the law doesn't, we will look at ways that we can make that correction, and we'll do it through legislation.
And sometimes it's just as easy as calling up the secretary of a department and saying, hey, you may not have seen this issue, but you may want to correct it, and you may get just get the correction through that, where you don't even need to go through the legislative process, which is sometimes a lot easier and simpler and cleaner.
Wouldn't that be right?
Yeah.
Well, we just passed actually it ran yesterday, House Bill 421.
The
Representative Adam Harris's bill. We'll talk about it a little bit, because I thought that was a pretty good bill.
That was a neat one. I think that was driven through local media as well, where local TV station picked up that state employees were actually retiring, coming back to work, and still collecting unemployment compensation, basically triple dipping within the system, which is just not a good practice whatsoever. I mean,
and this is something that we actually saw and uncovered firsthand when I worked at the Department of Labor and Industry as policy director. We saw that state employees would leave, they would collect their pensions, and then they would come back right away. I mean, literally, right away, turn around, come back to the department as a 90-day annuitant, and then when they would leave that period, even though that was a defined period of time, they knew they were only there for those 90 days and that they would be leaving, they would still go out and collect their UC benefits. And so this is something that we started pushing out there as something that we thought was wrong and incorrect, and it did get picked up in some of the local media sources, and now I think we've generated the support to crack down on this as well, and I think it's going to save just the state as an employer about $1 million is the estimate in a 1-year time period next year. So again, something that is needs to be addressed, not something that the state should have been doing, and hopefully we'll be able to make that change legislatively.
We had House Bill 118, I believe Representative Ellis's bill, the whistleblower bill, and we'll talk about that a little bit, because I think that was another good piece of legislation, because sometimes people are afraid to say something in the workplace, and because the retaliation could be that they could lose their jobs, right?
Sure. And so, we have passed some whistleblower legislation in the past, and this would add individuals. There are actually two bills. One would add employees of the legislature and into that, and then the other would add government contractors. And so these are two groups of individuals that are involved in the process. They're going to actually have probably some inside insights on these contracts and negotiations that are going on. And if they see something, we want to make sure that they can say something and be protected in that process.
And talk about openness and transparency in government. I think it's the best way to go. The more open and transparent you are, the more information you can get, the better the government can do things at a lower cost. And so it benefits everybody. It benefits the taxpayers, benefits the agencies. So between Jerry Knowles' bill and these two great whistleblower bills, I mean, we are making government more transparent and open for individuals, which is a crux of our founding.
The bill I didn't mention was House Bill 185. Representative Gibbons' bill is the other whistleblower bill. But so I'm really excited about what we're doing in the Labor Committee, and one of the things I would like to see in the prevailing wage, we've been waiting too long. We need to address it. The taxpayers are paying for it, and we need to address it. These small municipalities, for $25,000, anything over $25,000, they have to go prevailing wage, and it's a tremendous cost, and it's got to be addressed. So we might not get the number that we really want, but we need to address it, and we will do something.
I would think it's common sense. We haven't increased that threshold since the inception of it.
And that was the early 1960s.
I mean, $25,000 today is what, $180,000, and for those workers out there who do government work, $180,000 are not your big projects. They're not the building of the schools. They're not redoing an interstate. We're talking about little maintenance things that will really do a lot of cost savings for school districts and local governments.
But you're doing projects that wouldn't be done. Some of those projects, because they have to go prevailing wage, they just don't do them. And so it doesn't help you. It hurts you because you won't have the job. So, whatever that number is going to be, we definitely have to move it into the six figures. We cannot continue to work at the 25. As a county commissioner, there were times that I honestly, to do the courthouse steps, it was like $29,000, and we had to go prevailing wages. We could have done that for a lot less money. And you almost didn't want to do the steps. You said, no, I can go another year. And we did for a couple. We delayed it a while because I didn't want to lay out the money. But unfortunately, at some point you have to do it. But again, it would create more jobs rather than less jobs.
Getting people back there. And talk about the construction industry as a whole and where that segment of society is with projects not getting done and stuff like that. I think it would be a huge windfall for them just to get back to work and get their people employed and out doing a job, which would obviously help us on unemployment compensation, help us with tax revenue getting up, help businesses because people have money to go out there and spend it and stuff like that. So it's a win-win all around.
And on prevailing wage, the threshold is certainly the most egregious point that needs to be addressed. Another one that I'd like to see changed is the maintenance definition for road work. We talk a lot about transparency transportation in our General Assembly and the need for better transportation funding. But one of the things that's out there is maintenance. Just resurfacing of roads falls under the definition of prevailing wage. And I've talked to PennDOT in my area, and their representatives tell me that for the same dollar amount that they do projects right now under prevailing wage, they can do 70 or 80 miles of road work. If they didn't have to comply with that, they could do 110 miles of road. Wow. And you're sitting there going, well, this is just common sense again. I mean, for the same project, the same work, if you can repave more miles of road at the same price, why wouldn't you do that?
And we're not talking about a major road reconstruction. We're talking about putting a couple of inches of blacktop, a machine is doing it basically, on a pavement, and you know, it's just.
Those are two great changes that I've been very supportive of, and hopefully we can get
I
some
think
movement
that's something that we need to address. You know, I will welcome that bill. I think it's something that needs to be addressed because there's municipalities out there again that have you have to drive around the Commonwealth. Our roads right now are really hurting. You know, I know that there's a transportation bill being proposed, and we need to find revenues to fix our roads. But at the same time, what we're talking about will actually save us looking for some of that revenue if we can go at some of these projects without the prevailing wage.
And you know, I would hope that these are very reasonable changes and proposals that are out there. And so I would hope that we can find support across the Commonwealth to do some things like this in the General Assembly.
Especially that maintenance piece was done by a court case. It wasn't legislative action. It was a court case that was handed down, and now unfortunately our local governments are hamstrung by that action.
I was on the Labor Committee when that court case was handed down, and I was like shaking my head. And of course, then we were about to adjust it, and then we lost the majority. And so, of course, you know that wasn't going to come up for the next 4 years. But that's when I was on the Labor. I was on Labor for the first 4 or 5 years that I was in the House. So I know that one of the issues that our constituents are pretty much up in arms about is the call centers. Why don't we talk a little bit about that, because that I believe it's being addressed. They've had some issues, but
I think any individual who's out there and had to file for unemployment compensation benefits has probably dealt with this problem where they call into the UC call centers. They either get a busy signal, or maybe they do get through after an extensive wait, but then it takes them a long time to actually have their claim handled. And so the problem really generates from a couple areas. One is that we have an antiquated call system, so that's trying to deal. The second is that there's a very high volume of individuals that are calling in nowadays. And then the third is really that there are some issues with new technologies out there of individuals using apps on their cell phones and smartphones to automatically redial. And there was even some thought or talk about the fact that maybe somebody was intentionally trying to jam up the system. So the Department of Labor and Industry is trying to deal with this issue. We're in constant communication with them. We held a hearing on it.
It was a pretty good hearing.
Absolutely.
Very good hearing,
It was very educational. And you know, I think what we're going to see is that continued dialogue, and I know they've made some improvements already. If things don't get better, you know, we're certainly going to step in from the General Assembly point of view and make sure that we do address that.
We've seen a huge decrease in calls based on people not being able to get through. I think the Labor and Industry, the administration realized it. I know they tried to work with all of our offices to try to get a easier approach to resolving the issue. I know a big one for our constituents is after they did file, L&I would give them a call, but it would be a block call, and a lot of people call their screens today, or screen their calls today. So they actually didn't get the call, so they'd have to call back and go back on the queue and wait for the next call. So I'm very happy that L&I realized that and actually has, you know, Labor and Industry calling you now and stuff like that. They're very adaptive.
In my local area, John Casello at the Career Link would open up his doors earlier because there's folks waiting to use the phone there. And they might have been on for 6 hours waiting because there's other people in front. And so for those folks that waited the night before, he would bring them in earlier and just have them waiting at the phone and lining them up. But that's one of the things that we brought up during the hearing.
And this is another issue where individuals, wherever they're located, can contact their state representative. I know our office has helped a lot of individuals out, and we're more than happy to do that at any time.
And for the most part, we do a pretty good job, our offices, for any issue, you know, no matter what the issue is. And if you know, the beauty that I find, and it's like an old movie where someone's been everywhere, and they couldn't get help, and they walk into your office, and they're able to get that help. You almost want to ring a bell or something and say, you know, it's a good feeling. It really is a good feeling. And I tell people, when we lose that feeling, we shouldn't be in the legislature.
Yeah.
Am I right,
Absolutely.
you know, guys?
Absolutely. I still get chills on the back of my neck walking on the House floor.
Great.
And just just its beauty, the history. You know, Ben Franklin was a speaker.
Think
you know, our founding fathers were sitting there doing what we're doing. I mean, how exciting is that, and privileged are we to be able to do that?
That's the right word, you know, privilege. It's an honor and a privilege to serve our you know, communities. I grew up in the area that I represent, and I can't think of a better way to give back to my community than by serving them in the House.
I tell people, when we lose that feeling, when you come onto the floor, you shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Because it's what an honor. Look at me. I never was in the. I never did I think that I was going to be in government at all. I was always in small business, supermarket. But over an issue, I run for a public office. I run for mayor of the borough, and we were able to address that issue. And within 6, 7 years, the county commissioner calls me and says, "I want you to run for my job, Janet Weidensall." And so I talked about it to my wife, and I ran for county. I was chair of county commissioners. Now you know, I came from New York, and the first time somebody county-wide was elected to a county-wide office. And so when they created the House seat, I decided to run for it because it was right in the heart of this district. But if you had asked me 30 years ago what I'd be doing, I said, no, I'd still be selling groceries. But it's been, and to me, what an honor it is to be able to serve. And here I'm chair of the Labor Committee.
Well,
my gosh.
You know, before we close, Mario, I do want to thank you for all your leadership and service. You do a great job on the Labor and Industry Committee as chairman. And you know, today we talked about some big issues: property tax reform, unemployment compensation reform. There are a lot of other big issues out there as well that we didn't get to touch on: workers' compensation reform, workforce development programs. These are all things that we look forward to tackling and handling in the legislature this session. But couldn't do it without your leadership on the committee.
I'm blessed with 2 great legislators, and I really admire both of you, and to have you both on the committee, and it's an honor.
Yeah, I'm glad you came in during a special election. You've been a great asset, very smart, Harvard grad. I mean, my God.
Well, Mike, but you
awesome.
know what it comes down to. But you know, every one of us has a background, and take that background and you know, share those ideas. And I think our caucus does a pretty good job of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Oh, it's a very diverse caucus, and we do a great job. So.
Looking forward to working with you, gentlemen.
Appreciate
Thank
it,
you,
Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You've been watching my conversation with Representative Seth Grove and House Labor and Industry Chairman Mario Scavello. That's all the time we have for today's program. If you have any questions about the topics discussed, feel free to contact my local office or feel free to reach out through our website. That information will be shown in a moment. Thanks again for watching, and please join me next time for a Legislative Report.